Hello and welcome to the MacAttack. The MacAttack is a uptown, downtown, crosstown look inside and outside of the resilient CIAA. I am Clyde Doughty Jr., aka Cool Mac, the VPAD for Bowie State University, the first HBCU in the state of Maryland. I'm joined by the omnipresent one, the
There
commish
you
of the
go.
CIAA, Jacqie, J. Mac, McWilliams Parker. J. Mac, what we got today?
Hey, Clyde, it's good to see you, Cool Mac. So excited to have our guest, Anthony Holman, the commissioner of the SIAC, Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. But he's also a former graduate of Johnson C. Smith University, a former football player, an alumnus of CIAA and JCSU. So we know he's at SIAC, but he is part of CIAA for life. But really thrilled to be working with my colleague, my brother, my friend, a confidant in the industry, and just very happy to have you on our show today, Commissioner Holloman. So thank you.
Now, thank you all for having me. Clyde,
Yes,
Jacqie,
sir.
looking forward to it.
Awesome. So, Clyde, we're focusing on the 50th anniversary of Division Two and how awesome it is to have Commissioner Holloman and myself to be, and you, is because we are Division Two has been most of our platform. Although, Anthony, you've been to Division One and Division Two. You've been in all of the conferences in some kind of um, capacity. But just interested in you just landing in Division Two and the differences for you and being the commissioner of the SIAC. What's that been like for you so far?
So, Jackie, it's been a whirlwind having the opportunity to sit in this position as commissioner of the SIAC, the second oldest HBCU conference in the country, having played sports at Johnson C. Smith in the CIAA. You have this great perspective about the opportunities that our institutions provide. But when you're in a leadership role, you're also dealing with some of the challenges that face our institutions because the landscape definitely has changed over the years. There are tremendous opportunities, but when you look at our institutions historically have been underfunded, so the resources just not in place. Our universities have come to the party late when it comes to fundraising and growing our endowments, so you don't have the diversity in the streams of revenue. If you have a public institution, you're dependent on your student enrollment to drive athletic funds. We've gotten to a point at some of our institutions where we're not able to use other sources of income to
Yeah.
support our programs. And so we want to be competitive on a national scale. We want to compete for championships, but it becomes difficult when you look at some of our peer institutions who are fully funded in most sports. But, we have always done a good job of making the best out of what we have. And so that's, our motto here at the SIAC. We're going to compete with what we have and represent our institutions with pride and class.
Yeah, yeah. Clyde, can you add to that? I mean, you've been in Division Two for a long time as well, and being the AD at Bowie State, and again in the leadership role. What is it like for Bowie to be in Division Two, and your own experience as well, and what you have found?
Well, I always talk about the moment, Jackie. The moment is now, and now is the moment that never ends. And if you understand the moment, you know where you come from and where you're going. So I look at this whole 50th anniversary in a very interesting perspective. I started my basketball career at New York Institute of Technology and also became an administrator there in 1976. So if you look back and if I do the math right, because I be on math and mathing real well, but that means that Division Two started in 1974, only 2 years before I came a student athlete. I'm looking back at the time I'm walking in there. I had no idea that that's only the third year that the NCAA Division Two had been in place, and it's come a long way. So also too, you look at those dates. NCAA was founded in 1906. So it was a bunch of years before Division II was even founded, before they even recognized these different levels of engagement that institutions were having at this level. To look at what we have, I played for a Division II championship. We played at Springfield. I mean, it was, you could throw a rock through the number of people that was there, and it would reverberate throughout the arena because there was hardly anybody in there. But now you look at what has come from Division II and what they have done on that scale is really phenomenal. I think the leadership from Mike Racy now to Terry has been phenomenal about the growth of what they have meant. And, we had to come up with a tagline because Division II was always looked at as that middle child.
Yeah.
What are you? Who are you? You're not Division III, they're academics. You're not Division I, they're big time. Who the heck are you guys? So we had to create that brand for ourselves and that space for ourselves. And it's kind of working. And I know things getting kind of convoluted right now with NIL and also to the portal, and things are shifting around. But as far as me being in space, I'm at Bowie State. This is my 9th year, which I love. And being in this space, coming out of a PWI and being there, I can see there's really, people always ask me that question, Jacqie. There's no difference in what we're trying to achieve in education and also in athletic participation. We're all trying to get success and excel. There's a difference that when I was at a PWI, I had to defend my blackness all the time. Why you do this? Why you do what? Why's your hair like that? Do y'all use those products? Yeah. Okay. Over here, we don't have to do that, but we're still on the same plane as far as taking off and trying to do things. Now, Commissioner Holloman, he put it right. The resources and what we have done in the HBCUs hasn't been sufficient. We haven't told our story enough, or have been prevented from telling our story, have been prevented from getting access, have been forced into spaces. Also, as you also know, Jacqie, as you have this fight in our division, when they try to move us from this region to that region without even bothering to ask us the question of where you want to be. So here goes that same mentality. We're just going to move you black folks over here. We're going to move you over here. We're going to give you what you want. We try to do something special, have a zero football game on the zero date with SIAC so we can do something special. No, you can't do it. But they get into a convention and they vote it all in because now it benefits them. So here we have the same thing. We have to fight and tell our story. So the struggle continues, but we're doing better. We have to unify. The interaction when we have it with your conference, Commissioner Holloman, is fantastic. We just had the SIAC softball challenge down in Spartanburg, I think South Carolina. Great time, So we're looking forward to those engagements. We have to tell our story. We have to do more in the space between ourselves to make ourselves viable. With this coming about with the media rights things that you both commissioners are working on, it's going to be a big plus for us to get visibility. Every time there's a game, a HBCU game on television, people call me up. Man, I just saw this school. I just saw school from the SIAC on TV, because we were never on TV. We were excluded.
Yeah.
And all they saw is these other school sports. So Jacqie, I know I'm running off with the mouth right now.
Good.
But
I mean, I think that's part of the history of being in, again, Division II, the 50 years that we celebrate, when we couldn't even get into the NCAA. I mean, so let's start there. And now that we've been in it, there's been some tremendous efforts and opportunities that have been provided to our institutions, but it still has been a struggle. Like you said, I mean, there were years before we could even get an automatic qualification for our teams to participate. And now that we have it, our teams are still working through. Our volleyball, we get in, but sometimes we don't get to the second round. And when we do, we hype it up. And our hope is that we can continue to advance. We've had a lot of success in national championships in track and field for the CIAA. George Williams has won. I think I wrote down like 13 in men's and another 8 in women's. I mean, we're talking about indoor, outdoor, a total of maybe close to 30 national championships in Division II. When Hampton was in there, same thing. When you look at the success of, when I look at the Hall of Fame and the Legacy Bowl and who's in the Black College Hall of Fame, SIAC and SWAC, they're all in it, right? But what's interesting, and I'm trying to figure this out in Division II, the Winston-Salem State, I think Central State has played in the national championship in the history of Division II for football. And we can't lose that. You know, we can't forget that. In basketball, Virginia Union, Cheney, when they were doing Morgan State, when they were part of CIAA, like they won national championships. Shaw, Virginia Union, North Carolina Central. I mean, we can name all the Division II schools that have had national championships, and now many of them are in Division I, and there's no mention of it unless we continue to tell those stories. So I do think we have been a part of the fabric of Division II of and having presence even in our leadership, whether it's McClendon, whether it's Big House, Gaines, whether it's any of us, our presidents. Anthony, you can probably go off the list of who has made impact in Division II for SIAC. I mean, we have stood on the floor and fought for a lot of different things. And if it wasn't for our conferences to do that, some of the things that are in place now wouldn't have never happened.
And before Anthony jumps in, Anthony, when I was at New York Tech, the second year I was there, sophomore, we got into the NCAA playoffs and we played against Albany State. And they had the Caldwell brothers in there. Now, I had no idea what a HBCU was because up in New York, they never really talked about HBCU. I thought a college was a college. I mean, you know what your college is. But then to see them down there, and I said, oh, this is an HBCU. And what it started to me, that's the first inkling I had of what an HBCU was.
Now, you know,
Wow.
that is so significant because when you look at Division II, Florida A&M, when they were a member of the SIAC,
Yeah.
won national championship. We just honored the women's track team from Alabama A&M with a Hall of Fame that we put them in the Hall of Fame this past summer. They won back-to-back championships and were 1 point from three-peating.
Mm.
You know, so they were a phenomenal group of ladies that, you know, set the track world on fire. They had Olympians on that track team. And so it was great to honor them and their coach with a Hall of Fame induction, even though they've moved on to the SWAC.
Yeah. Yeah. How many schools? So most of those schools were in the SIAC before they
Yes.
went to. So,
Yes.
you know, one of the little known facts that I probably didn't even think about with SIAC, similar with CIAA, those schools who were founded and part of the CIAA, it was intentional to move into a division, to create a Division I conference, the MEAC. It wasn't to be competitive with us, but it was to have Division I, Division II presence. And so the Morgan State, the Coppin, the Maryland Eastern Shore, the South Carolina State, the A&T, the Howard, they create that MEAC space. And then the rest, you know, later on in years, our schools joined that conference. But the CIAA had 16 members before the break, not before the break off, but when I played, there was 16 members when you played in this conference. And then they did several of them, Norfolk State, Hampton, North Carolina Central decided to go Division I to MEAC. So, you know, I think people don't always recognize that the importance of the history of our conferences were intentional, one, so that we would have presence. We were AIAW, not AIAW, we were NAIA, right? Before we were even NCAA, winning national championships there. And then become part of the NCAA. And then we created our separate, the 4 conferences so that we would have presence in both divisions. It's always just interesting to me.
You know what's interesting about that also too, Jacqie? People still come up to me now and say, Norfolk, Morgan, they're not in the CIAA? And I go, no. They go, where they at? And it's amazing. I mean, black folk, white folk, in between folk, they all ask the same question because the CIAA brand is so strong. And the point that you just raised about where it germinated from still exists in these people's mind. And you know, we still have people who went to Norfolk and all those schools still come back to CIAA because
they do.
That's their history. And
you know,
I'm
it's
quite sure it's the
interesting.
same thing for SIAC.
I remember, I don't know if it was when I first got here, we had a major incident in the conference, and it was on national television. And they were talking about the CIAA schools, and they said Howard and Hampton. They said nothing. I was livid. I think I was in DC when I saw it, and I'm like, none of those schools are in our conference. Like, do your homework.
They don't. It's amazing, and I'm quite sure the same thing exists in the SIAC too.
No, absolutely. And so, Clyde,
Yeah.
you mentioned Coach John Chaney. You know, Coach is in the SIAC Hall of Fame for his basketball career at Bethune-Cookman.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, the SIAC and the CIAA are historic leagues that have, you know, had offsprings that have gone on to do big things in the
Yeah.
SIAC. And it all started, you know, with us. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something to be applauded.
And I think that applause needs to be reverberated throughout, because what's so great about what's happening now, we both of us are on this call, both Division II schools. When we went to DC commish, we had the folks from the MIAC and also to the SWAC
Right.
there together. That bond right now, we need to keep this bond, because
Yeah.
we're the missing link is us. If we do not continue
Yeah.
to work together, we're going to be left out, and
Yeah.
that's
So,
very crucial.
so you know, Clyde, you say that, but you know, I've been very fortunate. I stepped into this role September of 2022, and Jacqie, Charles, and Sonia were welcoming and helped me make my transition from a campus to the commissioner's role. And so the camaraderie, the professionalism that exists in this group is tremendous. And I've seen the growth of what we've been able to do because we've worked together. Jacqie is the senior statesman in the sense that, she's been in her role 12 years. Charles, 4 or 5. Sonia's in her second year, my second year. And just the willingness to share so that we all can thrive, because the competition is on the playing fields or courts, but we are businesses, and we're working together to be successful and understanding the collective power that we have when we have one voice, because our issues are the same. And so, it's great. Like, this past weekend, we had the major success with the CIAA having 2 of his teams playing during the NBA All-Star weekend, and the national platform and the pageantry. I was texting Jacqie, man, this looks great, because you saw us at our best, the essence of what our schools are.
Mm-hmm.
And then
It's
on the
fun.
next channel, you were watching Charles be the first chair of the NCAA men's basketball committee from a
Yes.
HBCU. And so those are historic moments,
Yeah.
but they also give us a national platform so people understand that we are doing great things amongst our institutions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think, the greater exposure when SIAC wins, CIAA wins. Like when Benedict is #1 in the region and they get to host, like that is big. When Bowie State was in the region and you guys were hosting and you kept advancing, I mean, we just kind of rally around. When we see the MIAC and the SWAC get into the tournament, like we are cheering everybody on until that last team is out. Even with our student athletes, like there's nothing like knowing in the NFL playoff. I mean, you had, or the playoffs. The Niners had, I think the athlete was from Howard or Morgan. He was a former player, and then we had Josh from Fayetteville State,
Yeah.
right? So I think the public and HBCU lovers that put all this stuff out really help us amplify our message. But I think the 4 conferences working together have this greater opportunity to advocate and to move the needle on who we are as a brand, and who we are as individual conferences, but our collective opportunities to really get stronger and better, as an HBCU community. I love what's happening with us right now, Clyde. I think even with the SIAC and CIAA, some things are happening organically, and Anthony and I are going to have to catch up to the organic because our schools understand it. So like the softball event this weekend, like that's fantastic. I got my t-shirt somewhere around here. I got to show y'all. But I mean, it just brings me joy to see, this. Like that's cool. Like, how cool is that our schools, our CIAA and SIA schools are representing and proud to be in Division II, but are showcasing some of the best athletes in HBCUs, but across all institutions in this showcase. And I love it. I think, as we look at golf and we look at tennis and we look at all of our other sports, I think there's opportunities there. Football and basketball, at least football has been the one that we have focused on, but I do see there's other opportunities.
Anthony hit on something, that one word that you hear a lot, and I want to focus on that a bit because both of y'all have done a yeoman's job in this space, and that's business. I love sports. I love education. Sometimes I don't like the business of education. Sometimes I don't like the business of sports, but it's very prevalent in what we do to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Both of you have worked side by side, even with the Division I conferences, to get us in a space where we're recognized. Anthony, you talked about the visibility and the branding. That is so important because people will call up and say, look, I saw you guys, because they're not used to seeing us in prime time. We're on some backward channel someplace or streaming someplace. We're stepping up our game, and people are starting to recognize the importance, not just of our conferences, but of our institutions and the history. And we have to do a better job of that. So I just want you guys to elaborate on the business aspects of how you guys are accomplishing things.
Yeah, I think we recognize we're in Division II, right? I mean, this life in the balance is what it is. So sometimes that's challenging for us. Honestly, when we talked about the 0 week, like, we get it. We totally understand that. But we also know there's an opportunity to engage our sports on our campuses and within our communities greater. The economic value of what our institutions bring to our communities is important and necessary, the jobs. So, when our institutions are stable, they have athletic programs, they have band, they have cheer. We know exactly how sport is integrated into the full body of the college program. And so it's easy for us. To me, it's a no-brainer that the work that we do, that we never isolate ourselves from being a part of the larger picture of higher ed. You two are working on your PhD. I started. I don't think that thing is ever going to work. But at the end of the day, you understand in higher ed the importance of the business model and how to make sure that athletics is not left out of that model, and the strategic planning and the diversity, equity, and inclusion and the Title IX. Those things are organic, but they can be very isolating on our campuses, right? Athletics at HBCUs can be isolating because sometimes we know it's competitive on the campus, from academics to college sports. But at the end of the day, many of our schools, private schools, athletics is what helps with the enrollment. So if schools are doing this properly, they're using athletics in a way, one, they're getting all the things to create that environment, but they're also getting the academic excellence of some of the greatest students in the country that are coming to their institution, that have the potential to take them on national platforms, or take them to the Legacy Bowl, or to the NBA All-Star game, or whatever that is, right? So there's a lot of exposure to me in athletics and telling our story if we integrate it in the right way. And you got to have leadership. I think our presidents that we report to have to buy into that model of the importance of what our conferences and our sports programs bring to the overall development and the growth of fundraising, what that looks like. And Anthony, you worked in that, so you understand. You've been on the AD side, and you've been on the development side of an institution, and a chief of staff or a president. So you understand kind of that holistic of trying to connect the dots in there. And I think as commissioners and having the experience, Clyde, whether you worked Division I, worked at the NCAA, worked in the bit, whatever it is, we get it. Right. We're just trying to make sure that we can bring others along to understand the model so that we can do media deals. Right. It can't just be the conference. It's a collective body of the conference to make those types of things work, so that we can all benefit from it at the end. It's kind of my thought.
And, Clyde, Jacqie hit it right on the head. This is a collective. Athletics are the front porch of the institution.
Absolutely.
It creates visibility. It's helping our institutions grow enrollment. We have, this past weekend, I was in Memphis, Lemoyne-Owen College announced they're adding men's volleyball. They are a small private school looking at ways to generate enrollment.
Yeah.
And so they saw that sport as a cost effective program that they could add, because you only can have 4 scholarships. And so if you have 20 players, you're going to have 16 full pays. When you look at it, in that realm, and they're not going to have to build any additional facilities because they already play women's volleyball. So you have institutions that create different sports that are allowing them to diversify their student base. You have these opportunities where sponsors want to be associated with your institutions when they're successful. And
Yeah.
so I think many of our presidents have realized that, you have to make an investment in your athletic program so that you can get the results, because your alums come back for homecoming, they buy season tickets, they give financially when you have successful programs.
Yeah.
Students want to come to your institutions when you win, when you play champion, and you're playing for championships. So all of those things, I think, go hand in hand. The partnerships that we've been able to forge with the NFL, the NBA, those partnerships provide opportunities for our kids for employment, internships, co-ops, and there's a financial component that helps us, when we look at how do we enhance our facilities. So those partnerships are bearing fruit. And so
Yeah.
I'm just excited for where we are. There's, clearly great opportunity for us. Jacqie and I have been working, I think, effectively to monetize, the partnership that we have. Our schools that are playing in the Florida Beach Bowl. We have schools playing in the NFL Hall of Fame Classic. All of those are revenue generators that make money, and it makes sense for our institutions. And so as long as we can be creative and leverage the popularity of our institutions and our sports, I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
And all these points you raise are so prevalent, at an institution where, Anthony, you hit it on the head, the front porch. We're not the most important part of the educational mission, but we do serve a front porch. At Bowie State, at 6,400 students, but 300 student athletes, but we cast a light out to all of those 6,400 student athletes, because nobody comes up to you and talks to you about the lab. No one talks to you about your library. They talk about your gym. They talk to you about your football facilities. And when people come to visit us in our athletic participation, what we represent is the mass of each institution. So we always have to remind our student athletes that, because sometimes they get focused on themselves. They don't understand the big picture. And that's our job, to create the big picture for them so they can see exactly what it is. A lot of them don't see it till they leave and come back, and then I get it, the light bulb goes off.
Yeah.
So we try to shine that light on, because when a recruit comes into me, I always say, why are you here? And if they talk about sports, I go, no. You're here to get an education. You got 4 years of eligibility and 40 years to do something else. What's the bigger picture? And that's what these HBC was founded. We weren't founded for play basketball. We weren't founded to play football. We were founded for opportunities, which we are now seeking for, at the time, disadvantaged individuals to gain upward mobility in this American society.
Yeah.
So, having said all of that, it's a great opportunity for us. The next 50 years is going to be phenomenal. And I want both of you to talk about, because I won't be here. Let me tell you right now.
I plan to. I'm trying to live like at least 105. Now I ain't gonna be the commissioner.
You can live there. I'm not trying to say I won't be here in that space, but
I
won't be here in this space.
Okay.
This chair, that bulldog, I'll be visiting. So
I got
talk about the next 10 years or 5 years. What do you guys see down the road coming about for Division II and especially for HBCUs?
Yeah, I with the transformation, legislation that happened a couple of years. I've been a little jaded about that, honestly, for Division II. I do think Division II is very balanced. I think that we make decisions that are conservative to support exactly who we are. Life in the balance. Um, I would like to see a little bit more flexibility on how we're able to have these collaborations and that makes sense for our schools and our conferences. I think we're all fitting in one box. And that's how legislation, and because of that, that's why we're in this nonsense that we're in, because the box doesn't fit for everyone. So I'm hoping that as we continue to move forward, that even SIAC, CIAA, that we think about legislation and the impact that it has on us, and if we have to be the driving force to make changes and shifts on things, even on the AQ for football. I still don't think it should be earned access. I'm not going to agree with it. I don't care how many teams are in the bracket. We don't do it for any other sport. For Division I, II, and III, and for whatever reason, it's been protected. And I think that we have to make a bigger noise. I'm a little disappointed that I was so focused on the 0 week that I didn't track on as much as I should have on that piece of legislation that we could have probably pushed more. But it's okay. We'll come back. And maybe it'll align with the 2025 change of the regions that we're moving in. I also think that the opportunities that we have with HBCU Go, currently 3 conferences are in it, the SWAC, the SIAC, and MEAC. I think there's a lot, not MEAC, CIAA. I think there's a lot of opportunities and growth collectively there as we are promoting our conferences. But I think the relationship with Byron Allen and Curtis Simmons in the HBCU Go provide some new opportunities for us. And I don't know what all that looks like. I just think they're really open, and we're open to really amplify HBCUs and our conferences and our storytelling. That's going to really help all 3 conferences at this time. And, for our conference, again, our job was to try to get this media rights deal for 10 years, and we got it. We're going to go through another apparel piece here in a minute, so those things are always going to be on the rise every 3 to 5 years. But I do think as we are working together as conferences, that we continue to be open about what those experiences are and opportunities for our conferences, how we can work together or support each other. And please know, when we use each other for advice, we talk. I think some people think we don't talk. We do talk. It's important. And it's interesting how, whether it's a promoter or a vendor, whoever, will go to one conference, and then if they don't get what they want, they go to another conference. And if they don't get, they go to another. And they're going to keep doing that because collectively we're talking about, is it worth the value for us to partner or to get involved with certain individuals, partners, as conferences, because we know it impacts the total brand of HBCUs and HBCU sports. So that's kind of my take, Clyde. I don't know if I gave a lot of meat, but I do think we are on the trajectory to do some greater things collectively as Division II, but also with our other HBCU conferences.
You fed us well. You fed us well.
So,
Anthony.
Clyde, for me, I think this year was a referendum on the collective power of the CIAA and the SIAC. Last year, we came to the table trying to get, a waiver to play week 0. That, fell on deaf ears. But this year, the other conferences who looked at week 0 for different reasons than we did, but they needed us to be partners on this legislation to get it passed.
Yeah.
And, I think what you're going to see is we are setting trends. Our media rights partnerships, our apparel deals are second to none in the Division II space.
Yeah.
And so I think people are going to want to replicate the successes that we're having. And so I think that you'll see a lot more people trying to go and explore the avenues that we have, paid for them.
Yeah.
So I think Division II will change because of the SIAC and the CIAA. The bowl games, the partnerships. I just did a deal to play 2 games on my championship week with Conference Carolinas. And I simply made that deal because I understand the limitations around earned access. So for the SIAC, I think for the last 3 years, I've had schools that have been in the top 8 of the regional rankings only to get bumped out
Yeah.
when people play 11 games. So, I talk to, my coaches, my athletic directors, my presidents, and sold them on the idea that they're going to move the CIAA. So us playing each other wouldn't be as valuable as it would me to play somebody who's going to be in region. And I also was strategic in aligning ourselves with games that I think are winnable. And so we're going to play 2 games in 25 and 2 games in 26. They'll be home for the SIAC in 25 and traveling in 26. But my schools that are in the regional rankings that don't make the championship game will have an opportunity to play an extra football game and win their way into the playoffs. So you can't deny me when I have earned, the right, to play those games. And so those are the kinds of things I think that we have to do to ensure that we control the narrative and our destiny.
Yeah.
I think as we move forward in all of the sports that we're playing, that we have to be on the offensive and figure out what is best for our leagues. How do we amplify um, the value of our institutions? We're working together to do it for the HBCUs, but separately, whatever we do should be to give our student athletes the best chance to have the greatest experience when they're playing sports at our institutions, and most of all, being students.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I was watching, I'm a big James Brown fan, and they just had a 2-day special on Monday and Tuesday on his life. And there's a song that James Brown put together. I'm a very historic, person when it comes to James Brown and what he did for us as Black folk. But he said there's a song called Same Beat. And that's what I hear right now, the same beat, that we have to have the same beat as we move forward. We separate as the fingers, but joined by the hand to make a collective fist of efficiency. And that's what we got to keep continuing to do. And that's what I hear loud and clear for both of y'all. And this is really interesting and gratifying to hear the things that we're trying to accomplish holistically. So any parting words as we close out this MacAttack? Getting ready for the tournament time. We're coming up first, and then the SIAC follows suit, and we're going to move on into the NCAA playoffs, looking for another champion out of our historic African American, Black, Negro colleges, colored, whatever you want to call us at the top.
No, Clyde and Jacqie, I just thank you for this insightful conversation and dialogue. I think it's important, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Dad.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's always I love this time of just talking about history and brainstorming. It always creates more ideas and more opportunities and more challenges. But at the end of the day, we are in a great place. I think both conferences are probably in the greatest spaces that they have been in a long time. And it's a blessing to see that. Like, we're not just, you know, thriving, like we are doing things, and it is fun. And Clyde, thank you, and our ads, and I'm sure Anthony will say our administrators who support us, because sometimes it's a lonely island as commissioners, but I have found that with the support of my colleagues, it's easier to manage expectations and to get out of your feelings and keep it moving for the benefit of these student athletes. So I appreciate both of you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank both of you, and I appreciate it. So, those out there enjoying this dialogue today, this is the MacAttack. Don't call it a comeback, because we've been here all the time. We'll see you next time. Same Mac station, same Mac time. Deuces.